All right, we're going to get started shortly here, waiting just a couple more minutes to allow everyone to join. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Wiser webinar, Performance at Scale, Wiser Scorecards, and Actionable Insights for Your Business. So at the conclusion of the webinar, we'll send out a follow-up email which includes this recorded webinar for you to share with your colleagues. We encourage you to interact with us throughout the presentation by sending over any questions you might have through the Q&A feature. Feel free to type in your questions as they come to you. We'd like this session to be collaborative, you know, a little bit of give and take. We'll address questions throughout the webinar and at the end of the session as time allows. So without further delay, let's go ahead and kick things off. So I'd like to introduce myself and my colleague here. My name is Tom Vieira. I'm the Director of Product Management at Wiser, and this is my colleague, Devin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Devin Kelly. I'm the Senior Director of Operations at Wiser.
Great. So, you know, here at Wiser, our mission is to enable better decisions using data, analytics, and insights to help our brand and retail customers, you know, win in today's highly competitive retail market conditions. We're 120 plus employees. We've been in business over half a decade and have offices across the globe. And these are a few of the brands that we've successfully worked with currently. So let's get right on into it. So for today's webinar, we're going to be talking about scorecards and how they can help your business drive more impact and better results. So we'll talk a little bit about the compliance problem, the benefits of getting in compliance and improving your store operations, and then talk a little bit about the who, what, how, why, and use cases specifically of scorecards. So one of the things that we deal with a lot of our brand, retail, and restaurant customers is, you know, what you expect to see is often very different from what is actually happening out there. So I don't think this was the facings that the category manager for the cereal section envisioned when they put together their planogram or whatnot. However, you can't fix what you can't see. And, you know, at Wiser, what we do is give you in-store visibility at scale so that you can then start knowing and ultimately correcting the issues that you have with compliance and problems in the store.
So you might be wondering where the data comes from. So we actually have a mobile app that is available for download on iOS and Android with over 600,000 shoppers that are actively using our app across the United States. The general breakdown from these users is about 70% female and 30% male, and the majority of them are between the ages of 20 and 39, and then it drops off, you know, 40 and up. Excuse me. And 68% of them have children. So, you know, pretty representative of the U.S. population. We do have users across the entire country, so we like to say that our user footprint follows the retail footprint. So that means that where there are stores, you will find users.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about why you would care about compliance and store conditions. So, you know, what's the problem if a product isn't selling in store? Well, it could be poorly merchandised. The shelves could be poorly stocked and not topped up. You could have in-store promotions that are getting poorly executed where it really matters at point of purchase and at point of sale. You could have under-trained, under-responsive, or simply unfriendly store staff, or things around getting foot traffic in, like the storefront and window displays could be uninviting and also poorly merchandised.
One of our top use cases here is with a GoPro, which I'm sure everybody has heard of. So we've worked with GoPro over the past couple of years to identify where the stores that are non-compliant and has been able to realize through their sales data and our in-store data that the acrylic boxes as a part of the displays have a much higher impact on in-store sales than other factors on the display, such as the lighting in the background or the TV being on. And with this data, we were able to identify a 40 million revenue opportunity through non-compliant stores.
Yeah, and you can see a little before and after. On the left side, on the before they got their visibility, I mean, all those pegs aren't properly stocked up with products, so it's not going to be selling. So I think this was a great example of a use case that we see a lot working with consumer electronics brands. So for the retailers or store operators focused folks, you know, Wiser Solutions also has a lot to offer there. Across every dimension here, whether it's employees and how they're greeting shoppers, helping people, being knowledgeable about new product or in-store initiatives, and really listening to shopper needs, empathizing, and then making recommendations, you know, to helping the shoppers have a better experience, navigate better, and that the pricing is competitive and in line with what the marketplace will bear. And then certainly at shelves, making sure that things are stocked up, planograms, facings, adjacencies, etc. If you're excellently operating, you'll be improving your revenue, which will ultimately improve your bottom line. So what we want to do is show off a specific part of the platform that we've developed called Scorecards, which are a good business intelligence visualization tool. And this is essentially what it is. You know, we'll get more into the details of it, but it's a one sheet that's, you know, you can glance at it, it's actionable, it's easily digestible, you can share it with folks across your team, and they're real concise visual reports that are going to help you drive impact for the key performance indicators that are most important for your business. You know, these are customizable and can be tailored to what's important to you so that you can easily see and your colleagues and field teams can easily see and ultimately start improving problematic store conditions.
And we have a question here, Tom. The question is, why did Wiser adopt a scorecard model instead of another option?
Cool, yeah, so, you know, ultimately scorecards are just a vehicle for data and analytics. And, you know, we could give you an Excel file with 1,000 rows in it, and you could have somebody on your insights team, you know, mine it for insights, or, you know, we could present it in a different format and kind of leave the heavy lifting to you. One thing that we found during our customer research with scorecards is that it's a quick and easy way to get to the pieces of information that are going to be most meaningful for you. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but scorecards are a great one sheet that it's quick and simple to get the insights that you need, and we do the heavy lifting, the data analysis and whatnot for you.
Sure. Another question is, what kind of issues can we identify in store? So I'll take this. It's kind of, you know, my team's bread and butter. So it really ranges on what your industry is. But in general, you know, if you are a brand or manufacturer or, excuse me, a consumer electronics customer, for example, it's, you know, you can apply something like display compliance, you know, across all of those industries. So you might have a display in Walmart or in the Kroger or at Best Buy. But what you want to make sure about is that it's compliant, and compliance has different factors for each of those display types. So we can identify those 3 or 5 KPIs and make sure that we're collecting that proper data and giving you the insight as to where you're strongly performing and where you're underperforming. And in something like a retailer or like a QSR, we can learn from you about your key operational KPIs. So what you're training your workforce to do, and that you want to make sure that they are hammering home so that your customers have the best experience, and adopt the scorecard model in the same way.
Yeah, great. So wanted to highlight a few things that we've heard from the marketplace here, you know, working with our partners about, again, why scorecards and why we thought this was an avenue to pursue for our business intelligence strategy. Hey, give us ammo when we're talking to retailers who we work with to show them how poor the in-store conditions are in comparison with others. So, for those of you that are brand manufacturers, you might have a channel or a particular chain or banner in mind that does a lot better job than some of the other channels you work with, or vice versa. That can all be kind of pie in the sky and hard to pin down. With something like scorecards, we can easily benchmark and show a channel how they're performing relative to your KPIs. One of the retail partners we work with was looking to score our territories against each other on a month-to-month basis. So this is like, divisions, districts, areas, markets, and it was all hierarchy to map to their org chart so that we could help them improve their performance in the specific area of the country that they're in charge of, and show that to them on a monthly basis. And, this even ended up tying into employee compensation. So that's a pretty cool program that we're using scorecards for.
Yeah, and another one, which is kind of what I was just talking on, was, visualizing on-shelf availability and merchandising on a store-by-store and retailer-by-retailer basis, so scored against each other. And this is a very common use case, which is what we kind of deem here as shelf health. So you want to make sure that your products are properly placed on the shelf, that you have the right amount of facings, and that you're in stock. So, and you want to look at that, if you have a channel breakdown in your company, it's very easy for you to do that, or if it's regionally broken down. So the tool is very flexible, that you have that view as, whatever you really need to fit the needs of your company.
So I want to talk a little bit about specifically how scorecards work. So it's a pretty straightforward 1, 2, 3 step process when we work with our partners. Hey, step 1 is define your KPIs. What's most important for your business? As Devin was just talking about, it could be different things, and we really tailor the scorecard to be your top key metrics that are important. Number 2, collect data via our shoppers. So we've got all these smartphone-enabled shoppers. They go out into the world and they collect data, in store, at point of purchase, at point of sale, where it matters most. And then finally, you receive your KPI scorecard. So on whatever cadence you've defined with us, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, maybe a 4-5-4 NRF cadence, you'll receive your KPI scorecard.
And who are they for? So you may be wondering if they're for you, and really the answer to this is that they're for anybody. It's, as I said before, it's very flexible. So we've got clients that are inside of the CPG and FMCG world, durable goods or hardline brands, and as well as retailers, and that includes restaurants and hospitality. So, as long as you're able to identify some KPIs that you're looking to measure in store, then we can work with you to make sure that we're asking the right questions in store in order to answer those questions and set up scorecards for you.
Great. So it looks like our Q&A blinked. You've got something?
Yeah, so this question speaks to me. It's how do we know that the scorecard data is accurate? And that data quality is a huge item of importance here. So we have a series of data checks that are both automatic as well as manual, that we call it a mission, that each mission is submitted, goes through. So there are data congruency checks on the background. There's geofence checks that are automatic to make sure that we're getting the data from the exact store at the correct time. And then there's actually a set of eyes that looks at every single mission to make sure that if the photo shows that the orange product is on the shelf, that we want to make sure that the user has provided information that the orange product is on the shelf and that it's priced at XYZ. So we used photos to verify that data and to make sure that the data that we're providing to our clients is of the best quality there is. Another one, Tom, that I think is good for you would be, is there any specific technology or tools that I need in order to receive scorecards, and how are they delivered?
Yeah, good question. Scorecards get emailed out as a PDF report. So it's a one-sheet PDF report that you can share around with your team if you see something interesting. We'll email them directly to you on a schedule, so you don't have to worry about it. It'll just pop right up in your inbox, and you can enjoy it with your morning coffee. Also there'll be a web dashboard that you can come into and dig a little bit deeper, but the scorecard is an email pushed out type tool.
Sure.
Cool.
And sorry, Tom, there's one more that just came in. This person says that they manage a number of restaurants. They're a franchisee, and they want to know how scorecards can work for QSRs. And particularly, they care about food quality, store cleanliness, organization, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely right there in the wheelhouse for something that scorecards are good for. So I can kind of see 3 levels that they could be helpful for. At the franchisee level, if you have multiple stores, or even if you have a single store that you're operating, scorecards are great. Let's pick the top KPIs that you care about. So I think you mentioned food quality, food temperature. That's something that we see with our QSR customers, and it's really the guest perception of food temperature that they care about. Overall guest satisfaction, we get into NPS there, but that's really great. If you're a level up and you're operating a specific region, you could go ahead and benchmark and score the franchisees against each other, or even up at HQ corporate and do the same type of thing where you're scoring large regions against each other to see who's performing well on the things like food quality, cleanliness, length of line, self-service area, napkins being kept topped up and whatnot. So it's definitely something that I'd encourage people in the QSR or restaurant hospitality space to reach out, because we're seeing some pretty awesome results in that space. Cool. All right. So I think what would make sense now, being a little bit into this webinar with you folks, let's go ahead and jump into a few use cases and actually go deeper on them, and we can kind of riff on them and see if anyone from the audience, or just kind of talk about where we've been successful with them. So one of the ones, we work with a lot of CPG brands, and there's different categories here, of course, but let's say that when there's in-store partners, there could be a merchandising broker or a field team, different ways to get your product merchandised, stocked, promotional displays set up, and different types of brick and mortar programs you might have. Devin, why don't you talk a little bit about the KPIs that we typically see and how we're helping CPG brands do better in store and compete?
Yeah, a lot of what we're doing with CPG brands is around placement and just the general planogram. So if you're a category manager, you're probably worried about the planogram as a whole. If you're a brand manager, you're probably worried about your brand and the specific products, maybe a couple of hero SKUs. So we want to make sure that where you have been told by the retailer that you're placed on the shelf, that you're there. We can also grab some shopper sentiment data around, if it's eye level, if it's easy to find. You probably don't want to do a scorecard on that, but it's good to know. Additionally with that, we definitely look at stock levels. We look at the total number of facings, if the pricing is proper, and if the promotion is present. So it probably doesn't come as a shock to most of you that when you set a promotion, stores are late to put it up. They don't put it up at all, or they leave it up for too long. So we're kind of your eyes and your ears there. We can go in and make sure that if it's up at the right time, it's down at the right time, and it's listed at the proper price.
Yeah, great. So let's talk a little bit about consumer electronics, another category that we have driven a lot of success in and are working with a lot of people in. Some of the things that we care about here now in consumer electronics, a lot of times these displays and fixtures in store are going to be very impactful on sales. So, you've negotiated some floor space, you've got this all planned out, you're going to be rolling out a new product. Seasonality comes into play big time. We're about to get into a very important part of the season. I hate to break to folks, but a lot of times, as Devin alluded to on the CPG side of the world, the compliance of how either it's store associates, store staff, or your third-party partners are merchandising and setting these things up is really, really poor, under half many times. So you can just in that case, if it is half, that's 50% of the trade spend that you've allocated to this program just not being even possible to drive ROI. So, some of the things here is, hey, is the fixture present? Is the signage set up correctly? If there's a screen, is it playing content? And, Devin, you alluded to this also, is it playing the updated content? So, for instance, one of the brands we were working with had some content that was supposed to be for Memorial Day specifically still up for Labor Day. So that's multiple periods later, and while I wouldn't say it's as bad as the fixture not even being there, it's still not what they want when they're trying to protect their brand equity and put their best foot forward for the shoppers in such a highly competitive retail environment that we're in. And then again, stock levels, we saw that example with GoPro, that when the acrylic box wasn't present for so many of those pegs, there was just no product there. And if the product's not there, it's not going to sell, and we've seen the data back that up. So just want to drive this point home that you don't know what you don't know. And until you get the visibility here into the poor conditions, your field teams or third-party partners can't fix it, and you can't start to hold the channels responsible either. So that's really what is great about scorecards. So I think we've got one more example here around QSR. Talked about this a little bit earlier. Operators of stores want to increase their guest satisfaction, and that's kind of the big metric that everything rolls up into. NPS is something else important here. Again, food freshness and the perception of the guest of the temperature. Another area that's interesting is limited time offers. So with LTOs, again, there's usually a pretty short time window, and there's a lot of sensitivity around getting the LTO signage up, around executing the LTO correctly. And, we've helped a couple of chains not even track if the LTO signage is up, but, kind of use it for like qualitative shopper sentiment. Did the guest even enjoy the LTO? So we can use the Wiser platform as almost like a market research tool to add on to what we're doing with the standard compliance type measures. Cool. So, we've talked about a lot here. I want to highlight a few of the benefits of scorecards and kind of start to tie some of these threads together here as we get going. So, number one, more sales, happier customers. How do we do this? Through better merchandise shelves, better executed promotions. If you're in the restaurant space, better executed limited time offers. If there's new store rollouts and you're a retailer, better executed new store rollouts, making sure the floor plan is well executed, and just more compliant store conditions in general. Things get messy, especially in the holiday season with the amount of foot traffic out there, and really keeping a tight ship and getting this visibility is step one into tightening up your operations and ultimately having happier customers. Cool, so let's kind of do a summary here of everything we talked about. We've been going for about 25 minutes. Definitely enjoyed this so far. The first thing we started with, let's go back to it. What you expect to see isn't what you actually see, right? What you've planned out in HQ or corporate, or what you expect in your stores or with your brand, it's not what's actually happening out there a lot of the time, maybe even more than half the time. Scorecards are ideal for brands, retailers, restaurants, etc. Basically across the board, we're able to drive value with our new scorecards functionality. These reports get you visibility into on-the-ground conditions where shoppers are actually present, interacting with your brand or chain. Once you've got this visibility, then you can prioritize and execute corrective actions to start improving things, which ultimately drive more sales and increase customer satisfaction. So, I'd just like to take the opportunity. First off, thanks everybody for joining. And, hey, if scorecards or the Wiser Solutions platform in general sounds like it could be impactful for your business, or you'd like to learn more, get in touch with our experts today, and, let's talk more about the value that we can provide working together. So let's see, I see the Q&A blinking again. Devin, do we have anything else?
Yep, so one of the questions is, what are some of the most common in-store problems, and, who are the worst offenders? So some of the most common in-store problems is a lack of replenishment. So, you know, low on-shelf availability. As a brand, you really don't have a lot of say over when a retailer is restocking their shelves. But if you see time and time again that you have low on-shelf availability, you want to address that with them. So certainly stock level, the promotions example that I mentioned before is a pretty common one. And with consumer electronics, a lot of it is around the demo product, which is often on those displays, is not functional. So it's not turned on, it's not working when the customer's trying to actually play with it to see if they want to buy it, and that's a huge impact on sales. And then some of the worst offenders, I don't think anybody will be surprised to hear about Walmart. Not traditionally known as the most compliant retailer out there, whereas you see Best Buy, and Best Buy in general is rather compliant. They're pretty good with their displays, though there's always room for improvement. I haven't seen any retailer that has popped up with 100% compliance in my time. So yeah. It's good to touch on all of your main retailers when you're thinking about that.
Yeah, another thing we see there is sometimes we get a case where maybe a region or a certain territory in the nation is underperforming. And sometimes that's an epiphany for brands particularly that just haven't had that, haven't had a finger on the pulse there. So while the channels is kind of more well-known, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I know they're not that well, that they're not very compliant. Sometimes there'll be a region that, you know, until it was surfaced through the way we're able to slice and dice the data, just wasn't available. And then we see repeat offenders in that same region.
Right. And another question is, are we U.S. only, or is there any Canadian data that we can grab, or European?
Good question. So we are able to collect data in Canada and the U.S., and through Europe, we have a partnership where we're able to go and provide visibility there. You know, our focus has been the U.S. and Canada, and, you know, we can talk more about that use case.
Yep. And the final one here is, you know, what does it take to get scorecards off the ground? You know, how much of my time is it going to take, and how much is handled by Wiser? So yeah, and I'll jump in on that one. So I would say what we do is we work very closely with our clients to make sure that we're taking the majority of the work off of your plate. That we are the experts in the field, but that being said, you are the experts in your company and your industry. So we will be asking you just for the information on those key business objectives that you're looking for us to measure. You know, we don't know that, so we need your help in that. But once that happens, then we're kind of off to the races. We're crafting those questions. We're launching all of the missions. We're getting the stores and creating those scorecards for you. So we do our best to make it as little work as possible for the clients, but we also want to make sure that we're getting the most detailed data and the most accurate data for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, another one just popped in, Tom. So how does your product validate back of house or non-customer facing area compliance?
Okay, you know, that's a good question. So currently we aren't offering back of house compliance. It's an area that we're exploring, particularly with partnerships, and kind of seeing how we can start to get that visibility. Some of the times those things do bubble up downstream and affect, of course, store conditions, but currently Wiser Solutions doesn't offer compliance for back of house.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, Tom. The last thing I would just add to that is that we have had people, our shoppers, kind of talk to associates to just see, you know, oh, you're out of stock. Do you have any in the back? And so that's kind of a way now that, as Tom said, we don't currently support it fully, but we can have our shoppers talk to associates just to see if it's in the back. And if it is, it hopefully triggers that associate to pull that product out and put it on the shelf.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've done those. That's, we'll call it a soft reset, and that's actually worked well a few times.
Yeah.
So good call out. So while we aren't having shoppers directly go into the back, we can start to suss that out and heck, get your product on the shelf in some of the cases, and we're able to record if it got out there. So that is a cool use case. Okay. So I don't see any more questions. You know, to kind of sum this up again, hey, thanks everybody for joining. We had some great turnout, had some good questions and participation. You know, you can get in touch with somebody here if you want to learn more at info@wiser.com. Here's our number at 1-855-469-4737. So I'd like to thank everybody again. Thank you, Devin, for joining me. I've had a lot of fun here, and I look forward to doing this again.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.